Heller, and then Senator Baldwin.
Madam Chair, thank you for this hearing, and for the ranking member, I think it's long overdue, and I want to thank our witnesses also for being here today and taking time from their busy schedule. You know, states like Nevada and most of us in the western portions of this country clearly have a lot of lands that are run by the federal government, whether it's BLM, Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and so I think it's critical to hear from Forest Service today and the Department of Interior to get some feedback on what we can do appropriately to fight back, push back on some of these wildfires. One of the greatest challenges facing our western forest and rangeland, as we've been talking all day, is the severity and the length of the fire season that we're faced with. Nevada is one of a handful of western states that seemingly keeps enduring record-breaking fire devastation year after year. From 2009 to 2013, wildland fires have burned over 1.2 million acres of Forest Service and BLM administered lands in my state. In the last 3 years, in particularly, have been devastating. 424,000 acres in 2011, 613,000 in 2012, 163,000 acres in 2013. So not telling you anything you don't already know. It's as big of an issue in Nevada as is everywhere else. In fact, the Secretary of Agriculture has declared a drought disaster in all counties in the state of Nevada, just as the senator from California had mentioned in her state. And unsurprisingly, the National Interagency Fire Center estimates the potential for wildland fires in August, September will remain high over California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And I'm assuming that Arizona is part of that also, Jeff. Needless to say, multiple fires have already broken out in the state of Nevada. We just recently had the Hunters Falls fire burning southwest of Reno at a cost of $800,000. Could have been much worse, but I think people under your jurisdiction did a tremendous job, and those in BLM and local firefighters in suppressing that particular fire. Here's the issue. This week, the weather forecasts throughout the week is that we'll have lightning storms. Throughout the state, you know, and so we all hold our collective breaths. What's going to happen with multiple lightning strikes day after day after day after day in states like California and Nevada, and the impact that's going to have? And I think it's clear from the numbers that everybody's talking about is that the status quo isn't quite working. I guess the first question I have is, how much does it cost per acre? I don't know if you have this number per acre to fight a wildfire.
It all depends on the fire. There's some where we can quickly get on top of and keep it small to a few acres that the overall cost is relatively small. I'd be glad to be able to provide you a range of costs. You know,
I'm assuming, does it change from state to state? I mean, the cost per one state as opposed to another, or is it just terrain and?
It's terrain, and then the number of homes is probably the other thing that really changes the cost. If we're having to, first of all, protect homes, communities from fire, that drives the strategy. It's going to require a lot more engines. It's going to justify the use of more equipment, and it's just much more difficult versus if we have an opportunity to put in a fire line and then just burn out from it. That's a much more effective. It's less costly. But there's no question when there's homes involved, the costs go up.
What about treatment? Is it cheaper to treat in a per acre? Fire suppression treatment, is it cheaper per acre to do that than it is to actually fight a fire?
There's no question. We've analyzed over 1,000 of our hazardous fuel treatments, and over 90% of those treatments have reduced the severity of the fire behavior so that it's easier for us to be able to suppress the fire. It's safer, without any question, for our firefighters. So we have the data that shows that by making that investment, we can reduce the severity so it's easier to stop that fire. We're more successful. And what's most important, it's safer for our firefighters to be able to get in there and do their work.
I appreciate what the men and women do to fight fires across this country. I've had my son, for that matter, has fought fires for the Forest Service and BLM both while he was in college. My brother did, close friends, and I think that's typical college work, that you join these crews and help fight these fires. And I really do appreciate their hard work and effort and what they've done for this country in trying to reduce the damage that's done by these fires. I saw a report earlier this month that discussed some of the highest risk areas near power lines and critical infrastructure. What are we doing to help relieve some of those problems? What I guess I'm concerned about is rolling blackouts in Nevada and California. That's potential from burning lines, critical lines, and perhaps even waterways, so on and so forth. What are we doing as an agency to protect these critical and potentially devastating areas that we can
Senator,
avoid?
can I ask, I normally don't do this, but because we have votes that are going to be called and I want to get through, would you answer that in writing, please?
That'd be
Because
fine.
of
That'd be
time,
fine.
thank you, and we'll make sure we get that question.
And
Excellent
if I may
question in writing.
submit more,
Yes,
to the record.
absolutely,
Okay.
and more questions. We'll go to Senator Ball.